Monica stepped into the terminal of the Boston Logan International Airport with a heart pounding full of nervous excitement. She was entirely convinced that this chilly autumn morning would go down in history as the absolute happiest day of her entire life. Tucked safely inside her leather handbag was a small, velvet-lined gift box containing news she had patiently waited weeks to share with her husband. However, when the frosted automatic doors of the International Arrivals Gate slid open, her world inverted in a single second. She watched him walk through the crowded terminal holding hands with another woman, their fingers intertwined with a casual intimacy that could never be mistaken for simple friendship. He never even looked in her direction. What he failed to realize at that exact moment was that he had just lost infinitely more than his devoted wife. Monica slowly turned her back on the scene, fading into the dense sea of travelers and taking with her a life-changing secret that he would take far too long to discover. Monica walked out into the crisp New England air, her gaze fixed straight ahead as she passed by countless strangers without looking anyone in the eye. All around her, the ambient hum of the airport terminal continued uninterrupted, completely indifferent to the quiet tragedy that had just unfolded. Families were tearfully embracing after long separations. Small children were giggling as they chased each other around baggage carousels, and livery drivers held up wooden placards displaying the names of arriving businessmen. Everything in the world went on precisely as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet for Monica, the universe had shattered. She stepped away from the glass sliding doors of the main building and found a secluded wooden bench right in front of the primary taxi queue. Only after sitting down on the cold surface did she notice how violently her hands were trembling. Her smartphone vibrated in her palm. Daniel was letting it ring. 5 seconds after the call dropped, a text message flashed across the screen. "Just landed, honey. The terminal is absolutely packed today. As soon as I clear customs and get through the crowd, I will call you." Monica closed her eyes tightly for a long moment, taking a slow, shaky breath. She had literally just watched him walk past her with his own eyes. He was not lost in custom lines, nor was he frantically scanning the arrival hall looking for her face. He was simply lying to her, calculating each word to maintain an illusion that no longer existed. She decided not to reply. She quietly slipped the phone back into the side pocket of her coat. A yellow cab pulled up directly in front of her bench, its tires squeaking against the damp pavement. The driver rolled down the passenger window and looked at her kindly. "Need a ride into the city, ma'am?" Monica offered a soft nod and climbed into the back seat. For the first 15 minutes of the drive, neither of them uttered a single word. As she stared out the tinted window at the familiar Boston skyline, the brick buildings and historic streets looked identical to how they had appeared when she drove past them earlier that morning. The agonizing difference was that she now understood she had spent the past several months living inside a carefully constructed reality that did not exist. The elderly driver eventually broke the silence, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Heading back from picking someone up at Logan? Monica hesitated, letting a few seconds tick away before answering in a low, even tone. "Yes," she whispered, pausing as her throat tightened. But the plans changed. The gentleman asked nothing further, and she felt profoundly grateful for his quiet respect. Halfway to her neighborhood, her phone vibrated again with another message from Daniel. "Sweetheart, it looks like the luggage carousel is going to take forever. The moment I get my bags, I will grab a cab." Monica looked at the glowing screen without emotion. He was continuing to fabricate elaborate excuses, while likely sitting comfortably in the passenger seat of that woman's car. For the very first time since stepping into the airport, she felt no burning urge to call him, scream at him, or demand an immediate confrontation. Instead, a deeply unsettling realization settled into her chest. She needed to know how long this had really been going on, because a lie of this magnitude did not originate in an airport terminal on a Tuesday morning. It had begun months ago, hidden beneath subtle shifts in routine and half-spoken truths. If she wanted to make a decision about her future that she would never regret later, she needed to uncover the complete, undeniable truth before taking a single step forward. When the taxi dropped her off in front of her suburban home, Monica unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet house. She placed the fresh bouquet of flowers she had bought that morning onto the wooden kitchen counter. Then, with deliberate slowness, she unzipped her handbag, pulled out the small gift box, and stared at it for a long minute. She chose not to open it, instead placing it carefully inside the top drawer of her desk. Not yet. Inside that box was a positive pregnancy test wrapped in white tissue paper, accompanied by a handwritten note in her own neat cursive that read, "We are going to be 3. Daniel had no idea. And after what she had just witnessed at the arrivals gate, she was no longer certain when, or even if, he ever deserved to know. She walked down the hallway to the home office, where they kept their important personal files and financial records. In the lower drawer of the wooden filing cabinet were folders they rarely opened together. She looked down at them without touching anything just yet. She was not hunting for hidden bank accounts or immediate legal evidence. She simply understood something fundamental that she had never imagined needing to consider. If she truly wanted to comprehend how her marriage had eroded to this point, she would have to methodically reconstruct the last several months of their life together, piece by piece. The phone on her desk began ringing again, displaying Daniel's contact photo. This time, Monica simply sat back and allowed the call to ring until it went straight to voicemail. Exactly 60 seconds later, an audio message arrived in her inbox. "My love, I am so sorry for not calling you earlier. The airport was an absolute nightmare, but I am finally in a cab on my way back. I miss you so much." Monica listened to the audio recording just once, her expression remaining entirely unreadable. She opened the messaging application on her screen. She did not type a response. She did not block his phone number, nor did she send an angry text accusing him of betrayal. For a fleeting second, she had considered calling him back to scream every painful truth into the speaker. But she quickly realized that an impulsive emotional outburst would only allow him to craft a convenient explanation before she possessed the full facts. Instead, she navigated to her settings and enabled an automatic backup option to archive every single text message, document, and audio recording she received moving forward. She did not take this step out of petty bitterness. She did it because, for the first time in her adult life, she understood that profound truth is never revealed by asking frantic questions, but by quietly paying attention. While Daniel remained completely confident that he was in total control of the narrative, Monica had just made the firm resolve that would permanently alter the trajectory of her future. Late that evening, when Daniel finally walked through the front door carrying his leather travel bag, he found Monica sitting quietly on the living room sofa. The television was playing softly in the background, and she was holding a warm mug of chamomile tea between her hands. "I am so sorry I took so long to get home, sweetheart," he said, setting his luggage down near the entryway. Logan Airport was an absolute zoo tonight. He crossed the hardwood floor, leaned down, and gently kissed her on the forehead. Monica did not pull away from his touch, but she did not return the affection either. She simply looked at him and said in a calm voice, "It must have been an exhausting trip for you." Daniel detected nothing unusual in her tone. He immediately launched into a 15-minute recount of his business trip, talking about the regional conference details, the delayed flights, and how tired he felt from all the travel. He casually mentioned the names of corporate colleagues Monica already knew well, referencing professional meetings that had likely taken place as scheduled. She listened intently to every single detail he shared, not because she believed a word coming out of his mouth, but because she was actively learning how to distinguish the thread of truth from the fabric of falsehood within his stories. That night, after Daniel had fallen into a deep sleep beside her, Monica remained awake, staring up at the shadows dancing across the bedroom ceiling. In the quiet darkness, she began systematically reviewing the past several months of their marriage, like a film critic rewatching a movie whose twist ending had already been spoiled. The frequent out-of-town business trips that had suddenly become mandatory, the quiet phone calls he always stepped out onto the back patio to take, and the late evenings at the office caused by supposedly unexpected staff meetings all began to realign in her mind. None of those isolated incidents had raised major red flags when they occurred. However, when viewed together as a collective whole, they formed an undeniable pattern, and that pattern pointed directly toward a second life, a life that involved a woman whose identity was still a mystery to her, but who was much closer to her reality than she could have ever anticipated. Over the course of the following week, Monica silently executed a complete shift in her daily approach, without drawing any suspicion from her husband. She completely stopped asking probing questions about his schedule, and she resisted any urge to secretly check his personal phone while he was in the shower, knowing full well that a man who lies with extreme care is equally meticulous about deleting his digital footprint. Instead, she redirected her focus toward physical, real-world details, the subtle introduction of expensive new clothing in his closet, the sudden switch to a different cologne after using the same brand for 6 years, and the contents of his jacket pockets before placing his laundry into the washing machine. One afternoon, while carefully folding freshly laundered shirts, she discovered a wrinkled parking garage receipt tucked into the small pocket of his trousers. The ticket was from an upscale shopping center in downtown Boston that neither of them ever visited. The date and timestamp stamped on the paper matched a Thursday evening when Daniel had explicitly told her he was stuck working late at his firm's headquarters. Monica carefully placed the receipt inside a plain white envelope and stored it in her desk. At first, that envelope contained only a single piece of paper, but as the weeks progressed, it would grow significantly thicker. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, her hidden operation was nearly compromised. Daniel unexpectedly returned home, hours ahead of his normal schedule, without sending an advance text. Monica managed to slip the envelope under a stack of reference books in the office, mere seconds before the door swung open. "What are you up to in here with the door closed?" he asked, leaning against the wooden frame with a casual smile. "Just organizing our quarterly health insurance records," she replied, her heart pounding violently against her ribs, while maintaining a completely composed facial expression. Daniel accepted her explanation without a second thought, and strolled into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. In that tense moment, Monica realized that a single careless mistake would destroy the strategic advantage she had worked so hard to establish. She began reading Daniel's subtle behavioral shifts with remarkable precision. When he was telling a minor, insignificant lie, he tended to over-explain everything, providing unnecessary street names, exact minutes, and extra details to make the story sound convincing. Conversely, when he was protecting a massive secret, he became unusually brief, almost blunt, as if he recognized that every additional word increased his exposure to mistake. She also noticed the extra time he spent admiring his reflection in the hallway mirror before heading out for his evening workouts. A man who suddenly begins obsessively refining his appearance rarely does so for the benefit of a long-term spouse. None of these observations proved anything on their own, but together they created a crystal-clear portrait of a man meticulously preparing himself to live two entirely separate lives. Monica decided that the time had come to confide in someone she trusted completely. She reached out to Sophia, her closest friend since their university days, and arranged to meet at a quiet, low-profile coffee shop several miles away from their usual neighborhood haunts, far from any place where they might accidentally run into Daniel or mutual acquaintances. They sat at a corner table near the back window, away from the chatter of other patrons. "Are you absolutely 100% certain about what you saw at the terminal, Monica?" Sophia asked in a low whisper, holding her porcelain coffee cup suspended mid-air without taking a sip. I saw him walk out of the international arrivals gate, holding her hand. Sophia, Monica replied, her voice steady and resolute. There is simply no other logical interpretation of what took place. Sophia set her cup down, her eyes wide with shock and concern. My God, so what is your next step? Are you going to confront him tonight? Monica remained silent for a few moments, watching the rain trickle down the window pane before offering a thoughtful response. No. If I simply march into the living room and scream at him right now, it gives him the immediate opportunity to fabricate a plausible cover story, or turn the blame back on me. Before I do anything final, I need to know how long this has actually been happening. I need to know who this woman is, and I need to figure out how much of our life over the last year was genuine love, and how much of it was merely a performance. Sophia stared at her friend with a complex mixture of intense worry and profound admiration. Uncovering all of those details is only going to inflict more pain on you, Moni. You are going to be forcing yourself to relive every single memory through a toxic lens. I am already in deep pain, Sophia, Monica answered gently, looking her friend straight in the eye. The crucial difference is that now, for the first time in months, I finally understand why everything felt so off. If you have ever felt in your gut that something was fundamentally wrong in a relationship, even when you couldn't put it into words, you know that the body senses the truth long before the mind is willing to accept it. Sophia nodded slowly, reaching across the small table to squeeze Monica's hand tightly. You have always been the strongest person I know, but please promise me you won't isolate yourself through this. The following Sunday, as she did every week, Monica drove out to the countryside to have lunch at her mother's house. She helped serve the roasted chicken, listened to her mother recount familiar stories about her uncle's garden, and for a few brief hours, immersed herself in the comforting warmth of family life. While they were standing together at the sink washing the lunch dishes, her mother turned to her with a smile and asked if Daniel would be joining them for her cousin's upcoming baptism the following month. Yes, of course he will be there, Monica replied, without the slightest tremor in her tone. She realized that day that when circumstances demanded it, she too possessed the ability to project absolute composure under extreme pressure. Monica's quiet investigation moved forward with methodical precision over the following weeks. She began cross-referencing the exact dates of Daniel's recorded business trips against subtle shifts in his domestic habits. Through her careful review, she pinpointed a specific time 8 months earlier, following an industry conference in another state, when Daniel had suddenly started sleeping with his smartphone placed face down on his nightstand, a habit he had never exhibited in their 7 years together. During that exact same month, he had abruptly joined a new gym, and his affectionate text messages had doubled in frequency, almost as if he were trying to compensate for an internal sense of guilt. Monica remembered that specific time frame with heartbreaking clarity. It had occurred shortly after she suffered a painful early pregnancy loss at 9 weeks, a private tragedy they had chosen not to share with anyone other than Sophia. Daniel had been remarkably attentive and gentle during the immediate days following the loss, but as the weeks passed, he had gradually pulled away, spending longer hours away from home. At the time, she had generously interpreted his emotional distance as his personal, quiet way of grieving their shared loss. Now, looking back with complete clarity, she realized his absence had likely been driven by something entirely different. The final piece of the mystery arrived in a manner she had not anticipated. Late one afternoon, while Daniel was taking a long shower, the digital tablet they routinely shared to stream movies on the couch lit up on the coffee table. A cloud storage application displayed an automatic photo notification across the screen. The display began to dim, but Monica tapped the glass just in time to prevent the device from locking itself. On the preview screen, she saw a newly created shared photo album bearing a single name, Camille. It was just a first name, but it was all the clue she needed. That very evening, Monica conducted a thorough, methodical search across public professional networks and social platforms, cross-referencing locations where Daniel had officially traveled. Within 2 hours, she located a profile that matched perfectly. A 31-year-old graphic designer working for a boutique creative agency in downtown Boston that occasionally contracted with Daniel's firm. Scroll back through Camille's public posts from 7 months prior. Monica found a photograph of a coastal sunset captioned, "The absolute best professional conferences are the ones you never saw coming." The timestamp on the image matched the exact weekend Monica had highlighted in her personal notebook. She now had a full name, a face, and a confirmed timeline. As the sound of running water continued behind the bathroom door, Monica logged out of the application, wiped the screen clean, and took a deep, steadying breath. She knew who the woman was. Now she needed to determine whether Camille was an active accomplice or another unsuspecting victim in Daniel's grand deception. In front of her husband, Monica continued to maintain the exact same persona she had displayed for years. She cheerfully asked him about his workday over dinner, brewed his favorite morning coffee, and laughed at his familiar jokes, even though sustaining that outward warmth required an immense exertion of willpower. She systematically reviewed their joint financial statements, identifying a high-end dinner charge for two near Camille's design agency on an evening Daniel claimed he was working late, as well as a boutique hotel booking right in downtown Boston, paid for with a credit card he assumed she never monitored. Every single document was scanned and filed into her growing folder. She reached a point where she no longer felt like she was investigating her husband. Rather, she felt as though she were meticulously documenting the secretive habits of a total stranger, who happened to sleep in her bed every night. During dinner one evening, Daniel casually mentioned that his department was requiring him to travel out of state again the following month. "It should be a very quick turnaround, honey," he said without looking up from his plate. "2 days max, maybe 3. Monica took a small sip of water and asked in a completely neutral tone, "Are you heading back to the same regional office as usual?" "Yeah, you know how it is," Daniel replied smoothly. "Always the same corporate clients and endless meetings." Monica nodded politely and smoothly transitioned the conversation to an unrelated topic. Inside her chest, another piece of her affection for him quietly withered away. It was not merely the fact that he was traveling to see another woman, it was the extraordinary ease with which he delivered the lie. There was not a hint of hesitation in his voice, no nervous twitch, no break in his calm demeanor. He spoke with the polished confidence of a man who had spent months perfecting a performance. Later that night, after Daniel was fast asleep, Monica retrieved her folder from its hiding spot and added a new sheet of paper to the stack. At the top of the page, she printed a single name in crisp capital letters, Camille. Beneath it, she systematically outlined every detail she had uncovered: full name, employer, office address, and the specific dates that coincided with Daniel's alleged business trips. She executed this task without anger or drama, approaching it with the cold objectivity of someone solving a complex logical puzzle, adding piece after piece until the complete picture became impossible to deny. Despite her remarkable internal strength, there were dark, difficult nights when Monica's emotional resolve threatened to crumble. In the quiet hours before dawn, she would occasionally wake up gasping for air from a disturbing nightmare in which she confronted Daniel directly, only to have him deny everything with such cool, persuasive charm that she began to doubt her own sanity, her own eyes, and the undeniable reality of what she had witnessed at Logan Airport. She would sit upright on the edge of the mattress, taking slow, deliberate breaths while staring at Daniel's back as he slept peacefully beside her. In those vulnerable moments, a treacherous voice inside her mind would whisper, "What if you are overanalyzing everything? What if there is a completely logical, innocent explanation for all of this?" Perhaps Camille was simply a valued business colleague, and the shared album, the parking receipt, and the late-night dinners were all benign professional interactions that her broken heart was misinterpreting out of lingering grief over her past miscarriage. It was Sophia who firmly re-anchored her back to reality during a meeting a few days later. "Monica, look at what you have sitting right here in front of you," Sophia said, gently tapping the thick folder spread across the table. "You have concrete dates, full names, official bank statements, time-stamped receipts, and matching flight records. This is not a collection of paranoid suspicions. This is an established, undeniable pattern of deceit. Do not allow your grief to make you doubt what you carefully documented with your own eyes." Monica looked at her friend and let out a long, shuddering sigh, feeling a profound sense of relief. "You are right, Sophia. Sometimes it feels less painful to question my own sanity than to accept that the man I trusted with my life is capable of doing this to me." "That is a completely human reaction," Sophia assured her softly. "Your brain is trying to protect you from the immense shock of the truth. But you cannot afford to live in limbo anymore, Moni. You know far too much now to ever go back to sleep." From that moment on, whenever self-doubt tried to creep into her thoughts, Monica would open the folder, not to torture herself with the painful details, but to remind herself that reality had already spoken clearly. Her task was no longer to discover what had happened, but to decide precisely how she was going to handle her liberation. The immense emotional toll of her double life inevitably began to manifest in Monica's professional environment. As a senior project director at a major logistics firm in Boston, her role required sharp mental focus, rapid decision-making, and flawless organizational skills. During those intense weeks, she caught herself rereading routine client emails 3 or 4 times before clicking send, forgetting important department meetings that she normally managed effortlessly, and staring blankly at her computer screen for long stretches while her mind endlessly replayed the timeline of Daniel's betrayals. Her division supervisor, a wise woman in her late 50s named Eleanor, who had mentored Monica for years, noticed the subtle change. One afternoon, Eleanor gently requested Monica to step into her private office and close the door behind her. "Is everything all right, Monica? You have seemed noticeably distant over the past couple of weeks, and that is very unlike you." Monica hesitated for a moment, weighing how much to reveal, before deciding that a brief moment of honesty was necessary. "I am currently navigating a very difficult personal situation at home, Eleanor, but I assure you, it will not impact my long-term performance here." Eleanor offered a warm, empathetic smile and shook her head gently. "You don't need to make grand promises to me, Monica. I am not calling you in here to reprimand you. I just want you to know that if you need flexibility with your hours, or if you need to take a few personal days to clear your head, the company will fully support you. I have lived long enough to know that nobody can perform at 100% when their personal foundation is experiencing an earthquake." That unexpected gesture of genuine compassion from a colleague touched Monica deeply. It served as a powerful, timely reminder that the entire world was not built on deception and hidden agendas. There were still sincere, kind-hearted people who offered help without expecting anything in return. Shortly after that conversation, Monica experienced another unexpected moment of support, this time from her father, Richard. A retired structural engineer who rarely discussed personal emotions, he called her out of the blue one evening to ask directly if she was doing okay in her marriage. Sophia had quietly voiced general concerns to Monica's mother, and as family news often does, the worry had reached her father. "You don't have to share any details you aren't comfortable discussing, sweetheart," her father said over the phone, his voice deep and reassuring. "I just want to make sure you know that no matter what happens, the doors to our house are wide open for you. Always." Monica felt a lump form in her throat as she fought back tears. "Thank you, Dad. I am just working through a lot of things right now." "Take all the time you need, daughter," Richard replied softly. Just don't try to carry the entire weight of the world on your own shoulders. That's what family is for. Reinforced by the steady support of her family and friends, Monica resolved to address the central question that had been haunting her. Did Camille know that Daniel was a married man? The thought of confronting the other woman had lingered in her mind for days. Initially, the easiest assumption was that Camille was fully aware of the situation and simply did not care about the damage being caused. However, the more Monica reviewed Camille's public social media presence, the more complex the picture became. Daniel never appeared tagged in any of her posts, and in the few photographs where a man was visible, his face was carefully cropped out or obscured. This deliberate pattern could mean two very different things. Either Camille was actively hiding a married lover, or Daniel had carefully constructed an elaborate fiction to keep her completely in the dark, just as he had done with Monica. Monica decided to find out for herself. She did not act out of pity for a stranger, but out of a fundamental need to understand the true nature of the man she had married. Was Daniel a man who engaged in a mutual affair with an accomplice, or was he a master manipulator capable of deceiving two women simultaneously with the exact same warm smile? On a sunny Thursday afternoon during her lunch hour, Monica drove to the commercial district where Camille's design agency was located. She did not enter the building, nor did she make a scene. She simply purchased a cup of coffee from a corner cafe and sat on an outdoor bench with a clear view of the main entrance. When Camille eventually emerged from the glass doors, Monica recognized her instantly from her online photos. Camille was walking at a brisk pace, holding a portfolio under her arm while checking her smartphone. As she paused at the pedestrian crosswalk, she looked down at her screen, and a genuine, radiant smile lit up her face. Monica could not see the text message, but she studied the woman's facial expression carefully. It was not the guarded, secretive expression of someone who knew she was participating in an illicit affair. It was the radiant, unreserved expression of a woman who genuinely believed she was in a loving relationship with an available man. In that single moment, something fundamental shifted inside Monica. The simmering anger she had harbored toward Camille evaporated completely. She realized that the sole architect of this massive betrayal was sleeping beside her every night, masquerading as a devoted husband at home, while playing the role of a single man whenever he stepped outside. Camille was not her enemy. She was simply the second victim of Daniel's elaborate web of lies, completely unaware that her happiness was built on a foundation of sand. When Monica arrived home that evening, she found Daniel in the kitchen humming a cheerful tune while preparing dinner, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife had been standing just yards away from his secret partner a few hours earlier. "How was your day, sweetheart?" he asked warmly, plating the pasta he had cooked. "It was fine, just a standard day at the office," Monica replied smoothly as she took her seat at the dining table. She observed his casual movements with a sense of detachment. He navigated the kitchen with supreme confidence, entirely unaware that the foundation of his double life was rapidly crumbling beneath his feet. For a brief second, she felt a strange, almost pitying emotion toward him. A pity for a man who honestly believed he maintained absolute control over a complex lie that was already spiraling out of his grasp. However, that fleeting pity was instantly replaced by a cold, unwavering determination. She would not act rashly out of emotional volatility. She would wait until every necessary piece was fully secured, before initiating the final reckoning. Nearly 3 weeks had elapsed since the encounter at Logan Airport. During that time, Monica had assembled a comprehensive, chronological timeline documenting 8 full months of Daniel's secret life. She knew the precise location where they had first met, the specific business trips he had fabricated, and even the unsettling detail that Daniel had gifted Camille the exact same style of pearl earrings he had given Monica for their 5th anniversary. That minor, lazy detail stung more than many of the larger lies. It revealed that he had not even bothered to exercise creative thought in his romance. He had simply recycled romantic gestures like a reusable script. Late one night, while Daniel slept soundly, Monica opened her desk drawer and pulled out the small velvet gift box she had brought to the airport. She lifted the lid and looked at the positive pregnancy test and the neatly folded note. "We are going to be 3. She had purchased that test weeks ago, overjoyed to confirm that her second pregnancy was progressing healthily. She had envisioned celebrating the news over a romantic dinner or surprising him at the airport. Now, looking at the tiny box, she recognized that the future she had envisioned with Daniel was entirely dead. Yet, a new future, entirely her own, was beginning to take shape. She locked the box securely back in her desk. The news no longer belonged to their marriage. It belonged to her and to the independent life she was preparing to build. Daniel began to sense that something subtle had changed in their household, even if he couldn't quite identify what it was. Monica no longer inquired about his daily schedule with her usual warmth, nor did she display any trace of concern when he announced late work obligations. Ironically, her cool, unbothered calm began to make him feel subtly anxious. One evening, while reviewing his cloud storage account, he noticed a system log indicating a recent login from an unrecognized browser session. A quick chill ran down his spine, but he quickly rationalized it as a technical glitch. He preferred not to investigate further. A part of him preferred comfortable ignorance. That same week, he felt an unexpected urge to test her mood. "Is everything all right between us, Moni? You've seemed a bit quiet lately." "I'm just tired, Daniel," she replied calmly, without looking up from her book. "Between the work projects and everything else, I'm just drained." Daniel accepted her explanation with a relieved smile. Yet, that very night, he found himself unable to sleep, tossed and turned by an inexplicable sense of unease. His instinct was signaling danger long before his mind was willing to face it. Without telling anyone, he quietly canceled an upcoming weekend getaway he had arranged with Camille, manufacturing a sudden corporate conflict. Fear was beginning to dictate his choices, though he had no idea that Monica already possessed every single piece of evidence required to bring his carefully constructed world crashing down. 2 nights prior to the planned confrontation, Daniel returned home earlier than expected. Monica barely managed to slide the evidentiary folder under the mattress seconds before he opened the bedroom door. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, eyeing her curiously. "Just looking for my phone charger," she replied, her pulse racing despite her controlled demeanor. Daniel accepted the line and walked down the hall, but Monica knew her time was up. There was no longer any room for delay. The following morning, she consulted quietly with an experienced family law attorney recommended by Eleanor. She was not filing court papers immediately, but she wanted a complete, clear understanding of her legal rights, asset division, and parental custody structures. Armed with legal clarity, she knew her final step was to close the loop with the other innocent party in this tragedy. That afternoon, she waited outside Camille's office building. As Camille stepped out onto the sidewalk, Monica walked up to her politely. "Camille?" The younger woman stopped, looking confused. "Yes? Do I know you?" "No," Monica said in a quiet, steady voice. "But I believe we both know the same man." Monica held up her phone, displaying a clear photograph of her and Daniel on their wedding day. Camille's face turned completely pale as she stared at the screen. "No, this isn't possible," she stammered, taking a step back in shock. "He told me he was completely divorced. He said you two had been legally separated for over 2 years and were only sharing the house temporarily for financial reasons." Monica observed her reaction closely, confirming her suspicion. Camille was not an accomplice. She was an unwitting victim of the exact same master manipulator. "I believe you," Monica said gently. "I didn't come here to cause a scene or attack you, but if I were in your position, I would want someone to tell me the truth." Tears filled Camille's eyes as she placed a hand over her mouth. I would have never, ever gotten involved with him if I knew he was actively married. I swear to you. I know, Monica replied softly. That is why I came to see you directly. Monica briefly shared a few documented dates from her folder, just enough to demonstrate the absolute scale of Daniel's deception. They parted ways without drama or anger. Two women bound by a shared realization of profound betrayal, each preparing to walk away from a toxic lie. When Daniel arrived home that evening, he felt a strange, heavy tension lingering in the air. Camille had ignored his texts all afternoon, leaving his messages unread, a pattern that had never happened before. When he walked into the dining room, he found Monica sitting quietly at the table. Laid out neatly in front of her was the thick folder. "Is everything okay, Moni?" he asked, setting his car keys on the sideboard. "Sit down, Daniel," she said, her voice dropping to a firm, commanding tone that forced him to obey immediately. Monica opened the file and began placing the documents onto the table one by one. The parking garage receipt, the itemized credit card statements with highlighted luxury dinners, the printed flight itineraries, and the photographs from the airport terminal showing him holding Camille's hand. "The day you arrived home from your conference, I went to Logan Airport to surprise you," Monica said with chilling calm. "I stood near the arrivals gate and watched you walk out holding her hand. You never saw me, but I saw everything." Daniel froze, his face draining of all color as he stared at the mountain of evidence spread across the polished wood. The dining room clock ticked loudly in the silence. "Monica, please, let me explain. It's not what you think." "Do not insult my intelligence by trying to explain," she interrupted firmly. "There is nothing left to explain. I know when it started. I know how you met. I know you lied to her and told her you were divorced. I know about the hotels, the dinners, and the weekend trips." Daniel dropped his head into his hands, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "I am so sorry, Monica. I never meant to hurt you. Things just got out of hand." "Things don't just get out of hand, Daniel," Monica replied with a profound, terrifying calm. "You made calculated choices every single day. You chose to lie to my face. You chose to come back to my bed after being with her. And you chose to pretend we had a future, while promising a different future to another woman." Daniel reached across the table in a desperate attempt to hold her hand, but Monica casually pulled her arm back, refusing to allow him touch her. The silence that filled the room was absolute. It was the quiet, irreversible silence that marks the absolute end of a lyra. "There is one more thing you need to see," Monica said softly. She reached into her bag, pulled out the small velvet box, and slid it across the table. Daniel opened it with trembling fingers. When his eyes landed on the positive pregnancy test and the note reading, "We are going to be 3, he broke down completely, tears streaming uncontrollably down his cheeks. "Moni, oh God, I didn't know, if I had known about the baby." "It changes absolutely nothing," Monica cut in with unyielding strength. "This child is going to grow up in a home built on truth and integrity, whether you are part of my life or not. I have already made my decision." There were no screaming matches in the days that followed, nor were there dramatic outbursts. Instead, a quiet, professional distance settled over the household as they navigated the practical details of separation. Daniel moved into a temporary rental apartment while Monica remained in their home. When Daniel attempted to suggest marriage counseling, Monica declined firmly. "Counseling is for couples who need to work on communication, Daniel. It cannot fix 8 months of deliberate, systematic deception." Camille, true to her word, severed all contact with Daniel immediately, sending him a final message that read, "Do not ever contact me again. You didn't just break your wife's trust. You built an entire relationship with me on a foundation of cruel lies." Daniel found himself completely isolated, facing the harsh consequences of his choices. His own father, upon learning the truth, told him sternly, "I raised you to be an honorable man, Daniel. You threw away a wonderful woman and a family for cheap thrills. I hope you learn from this, but the damage is done." 7 months later, Monica gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl, whom she named Valentina, a name representing strength and new beginnings. She embraced motherhood with remarkable grace, surrounding her daughter with the warmth of her family and friends. Sophia became a constant, joyful presence in Valentina's life, while Monica's parents provided unwavering support every step of the way. Daniel was granted structured visitation rights, which he fulfilled reliably, though the relationship between him and Monica remained strictly co-parenting and professional. Monica excelled at her firm, accepting a major promotion to head of operations a year later. She looked in the mirror one morning before heading to the office, and realized she was genuinely smiling again, not out of obligation, but out of true internal peace. Reflecting on her journey, as she watched her daughter take her first steps in the sunlit living room, Monica understood the deep life lessons embedded in her experience. True strength is not defined by the absence of pain, but by how we choose to conduct ourselves when our world falls apart. When confronted with profound betrayal, the most empowering response is not impulsive rage or bitter vengeance, but a quiet, methodical commitment to truth and self-respect. Dignity is maintained not by controlling the actions of others, but by controlling our own responses and establishing firm boundaries that protect our peace. Deception thrives in shadows and emotional chaos, but it loses all power when brought into the clear light of documented reality. Furthermore, holding on to anger only chains us to the person who hurt us. True liberation occurs when we replace bitterness with serene indifference, allowing us to move forward without carrying the weight of past betrayals. Life's greatest hardships often serve as painful, necessary catalysts that strip away illusions, forcing us to rebuild our lives on authentic foundations. In losing a broken marriage, Monica gained something far more precious: her self-respect, her inner peace, and the absolute certainty that she possessed the strength to build an exceptional life for herself and her daughter.